Hello, welcome to Geeks and Gaijins. I'm your resident Gaijin, John.
And I'm your resident geek, Tom.
And I'm coming to you from a cupboard in deepest Japan, where we're going to talk about everything Japan's related for about half an hour or so, depending on food, video games, anime, and more. How's that sound, Tom?
Sounds like a great time. Let's do it.
Really? Oh, that's good. But no. So, in this episode, coming up, we have some Pokemon. There's tests in Japan are weird. I've review my newest winter purchase. Something to warm us up in snack break. Then something even warmer with Tom, and maybe some more if we have time. What are contents?
No, I know exactly what I'm getting into now. 100%. It's all clearly laid out in front of me. Although it'll probably be clearer when I look at the timestamps that I put in the YouTube video for this episode later.
And hopefully it will be to you, listener, if you're listening on YouTube. But Pokemon, Tom. Pokemon. It exists.
It does. It definitely does.
And surprising absolutely no one, Pokemon is still extremely popular in Japan. And water is still wet, and gravity still exists. And generally, there was like some feeling, oh no, there might be a video game boycott, and there might be like low sales and Pokemon Sword and Shield. It's just so underpowered. No, it sold 6 million copies together in its first week. That is the fastest selling Nintendo Switch game ever. Beating Super Smash Bros. Ultimate from last year.
A worthy opponent.
Indeed. That game was also very good, but like, I think Pokemon just beats it regardless.
Pokemon just has a wider market available to it.
So Sun and Moon, which were the last Pokemon games, technically sold more than it, but they came out 3 years ago. Also, at that time, 3DS was more popular. It had more people owned a 3DS. And also, it wasn't the first Pokemon game on the console. That was Pokemon X and Y. So there might have been like some sustained or loss or whatever. Basically, not Sun and Moon, Sword and Shield are going to sell a metric ton of copies. Notably, this is also sold copies. This is not ones gone to wholesalers. These are ones sold to customers. Which is, yeah, it's insane. Absolutely insane.
Yeah, we were just having a conversation earlier about what exactly might be contributing to just how popular it is.
I think it's got a lot of its advertising, especially in Japan, pretty on point. You've got cute Pokemon, you've got Charizard, you've got Pikachu, you got a new Pokemon. There'll be a new Pokemon anime, I think, coming out right now or something. So
yeah.
The thing is with Pokemon is when it's firing on all gears, it's firing on all gears. You'll have new trading cards coming out. You'll have the new anime coming out. You'll have the new game coming out all at once. It's the first time for the Switch, and it's basically the Switch's big Christmas release, I want to say.
Yeah, so it's definitely going to get a lot more sales in before the end of the year.
Exactly. They even released the Switch Lite, which is a handheld version only of the Switch, at the same time. I think the only other big Switch game that they released around the moment was Luigi's Mansion 3.
Yeah, that was the big Halloween release.
Yeah, I don't think this is the big kind of like, oh, this is the Smash Bros of this year. We have Pokemon. Yeah, it's just insane how popular it is. Like, there's even like they've created a new Pokemon store in Japan, in Tokyo. Sorry, they've opened a bunch of pop-ups in like the US. It is, I think, it's something like the most successful franchise of all time, and that's just.
I'm not sure I 100% believe that, but it's definitely up there.
What is it? Last The core Pokemon RPG series has sold more than 241 million copies worldwide since the 1996 release of Red and Green.
I mean, that is pretty impressive. Just on its own, regardless of what it competes against, that's a very large number.
Whereas Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee, which are essentially they were remakes of those games, the first ones, those sold 3 million copies in their first week. So they sold about half of Sword and Shield. So it's not surprising, to be honest, that Sword and Shield are, with like all the new Pokemons and things, more popular.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting to see that despite all the controversy going into Pokemon Sword and Shield, when it was being announced and stuff, that it's still done really well, regardless of how many Pokemon it has in it or stuff like that.
Yeah, I'm just kind of wondering whether they actually might end up releasing like some kind of downloadable content for this one. But I don't know if the Pokemon Company have total control over that, because Nintendo have kind of been doing that with their games recently. Like Smash has been getting season passes, Fire Emblem is getting downloadable content, maybe something for Animal Crossing when that comes out.
Usually for Pokemon, their form of DLC is just a third game.
Yeah.
So like Z or Platinum or stuff like that.
Z didn't exist.
Did Z not exist? Did I
No.
just imagine that in a dream?
Yes, you
And
did.
then they have like the sequels for Black and White and Sun and Moon.
Yeah.
So
I think it depends. I don't know. Might end up happening, might not. But Pokemon shall remain it's just king of Japan. Out of those 6 million copies that sold in the first week, about 1.6 million of those was Japan.
dang, son.
That's Japan compared to the rest of the world. That's a quarter of the entire sales, all in Japan.
Now I have to look up what Japan's population is.
Japan's 127 million.
Not a bad percentage then.
No, that's over 0.5% of the Japanese population have bought either Pokemon Sword or Shield in the first
And
week.
that's just this week, so that's going to grow even more once Christmas hits.
One of those people is me. So
I don't think you quite come up with the stats. I'm not entirely sure how that works for you.
What do you mean? What do you mean? I exist here. I have a name written in katakana and everything.
I guess the sale that you bought from that store does still count as a Japanese sale, so yes.
Exactly. Japanese Amazon counts as Japanese, except for tax purposes, it counts as Luxembourg or something rubbish.
Fair.
Japanese Amazon is weird though. You can go to a konbini, aka a convenience store, and you can order stuff to the konbini and then just pay in cash at the konbini because cash is king because this is Japan.
That does make sense actually, yeah.
Though it costs like an extra 300 yen, I'm assuming, so you don't just run away, or like just order a bunch of stuff to one konbini and there's like, oh, well, no one came to pick this up.
I mean, yeah, you've got to cover the costs of actually transferring it, I'm assuming.
Yeah, who is this Jim Tanaka who's been ordering everything so much? Oh, damn you, Jim Tanaka.
Also, I think I got some news that the Pokemon Company have started releasing the anime on YouTube now.
Have they? Well, what was it? Yu-Gi-Oh! Were doing that quite a lot, weren't they? They released almost all of GX in the original series. I think 5D's on YouTube as well.
Yeah, I think I also read in the comments that companies like Gundam and Beyblade had been doing similar things. It looks like a lot of these long-running franchise anime are starting to move to free distribution platforms just because, I mean, they get most of their money from like their physical things like selling games or cards for Yu-Gi-Oh! Or other merchandise. So it's not as big a loss just to get a bunch of advertising out in the form of a TV show.
Yeah, it's essentially just the money of, and it's basically a huge marketizing. It's marketizing. I've invented that word. It's an entire set of marketizing.
Yes, they marketized it very well.
Indeed. That's some good marketizing. And speaking of marketizing, do you know what they don't marketize a bunch?
I mean, if they don't marketize it a bunch, I probably don't.
Well, it does happen in anime and you see it. I'm talking about school tests. Because this has not been established or you haven't heard the episodes before. I work in a Japanese high school. And when I was marking some tests, I found out, much to my, well, not horror, but kind of disconcertion, that marking tests is not the same in Japan and the UK or America as I assumed it would be.
How does it differ, John?
Because if something is wrong, as always, you put a nasty little cross. No, it's wrong. Cross. Bad. However, in Japan, if you put a small line, aka like half a cross, because you're too lazy or you're too efficient to do a full cross, that's also wrong. But do you know what that half cross also looks a lot like?
What does it look like, John?
A tick or a check mark, which they also don't use. So if you mark a bunch of Japanese teenagers' work and use a tick or a check mark to show they're right, it's very possibly that they look at their entire test and think they've got the entire thing wrong.
Okay, that would be confusing. So, what do they use for right and wrong
They
marks on
circle
a test?
things. They circle things. Apparently, this is the same in Korea as well, that I found out once being told by my Japanese teachers. But no, they essentially you circle something that's right.
And you
Which,
put a tick mark next to something that's wrong.
indeed.
All right. That
Whereas
that
this,
must be an odd transition for you
indeed,
to.
in the Western education system, when you circle something, it's like highlighted, like pay attention to this, it's bad. No, and here it's pay attention to this, it's right. This is why you see tests in anime when it's like 100 points. Like they're all covered in little circles. That's because circles indicate it's all right.
Any idea how this came about?
I have no clue whatsoever. I did find out why we started to use ticks and check marks though in the West.
Uh-huh.
Because I was like, why do we actually do this? Why does this it comes from apparently the Womans. The Womans, when something was verified as true, they would write next to it a V for Veritas. Okay, it's correct.
Verified.
Verified, indeed. However, over the years, people, as they always have, got lazy, and therefore
I can see where this is going.
shortened a small amount of it, and then just like would flick their wrist. So the V becomes the modern check mark or the modern tick, and therefore that's how it came about. So it's V, it's right. Whereas in Japan, it's confusing, and I almost made a bunch of Japanese teenage girls cry.
Oh, those poor things.
I know. I felt so bad. I literally, before I handed out the tests, because this happened in like one of the classes, for the rest of the class, I like put a big tick on the board and put like an equal sign to a circle. Because I was like, please, I didn't mean to. No one told me.
Wonderful.
This is not something they prepare you for.
Oh dear. You would think that if you're going to teach English in a foreign country, they would make sure you know how to fulfill all the requirements of being a teacher, which include marking tests.
But the thing is, marking tests is actually, this is going to sound like I'm blowing my own trumpet. Marking tests is apparently a big responsibility because it means you're essentially trusted to put things towards people's actual permanent grades and stuff. So usually some assistant teachers, especially in like big, more official schools, they aren't even allowed to mark stuff.
But they're like, this guy, he knows what he's doing.
Yes, he totally knows what he's doing. And therefore we're not going to tell him. Oh dear. So bar my just like screaming about the mistakes I make at a Japanese high school, it's like the dumbest comedy anime ever. Where is my ALT comedy anime? It must exist. Or if not, I'm making it.
I'm not entirely sure. Let's see. If I imagine how this works, you're going to have a bunch of foreign people coming into Japanese school into a Japanese high school setting and failing horribly to teach Japanese students.
Or just like the ALT character in like a Japanese high school anime. Because I don't think that's actually like existed. Like you have the foreign exchange student, which do exist here. But no, it's just like I'm just like half expecting is like, who's that? That's the idiot who just speaks English at us and we don't understand.
My only problem with that is that I would have to listen to more very, very unfortunately pronounced English.
Oh, Japanese people playing English. They have been better at that in Megalobox, which we love to talk about. The actual like English speaking character was voiced by an Australian. So who could speak Japanese. So yeah. My entire thing is Daijobu desu ka, which means you're right. Is everything okay?
That could be your character's catchphrase.
Daijobu desu ka. Am I Daijobu? I don't know. But we need to see if we are Daijobu and if we are Genki and healthy coming in because the winter months are approaching. And Japan, the winter months get pretty cold. Well, not actually that cold here at the moment, but if you get further up north near like Sapporo and stuff, it does get colder and colder and you get wind and horrible stuff. So you need to keep warm. And this is where my latest purchase comes in.
Aha, he's planned ahead.
Indeed. For I have bought a Kotatsu.
A true staple of Japanese culture.
Indeed. I'm just waiting for the samurai sword to turn up. No.
No, you're not allowed. I'm going to cut you off there.
I'm really not. I don't get why people obsess over those things. But anyway, no, I bought a Kotatsu from Amazon Japan because, as I said, I'm the most Japanese of foreigners. Now, if you're wondering what a Kotatsu is, don't worry. That's why I'm here. A Kotatsu is a coffee table. There we are. We're done. But wait, Thomas. There's more. Because in Japan, it's very popular to sit on the floor or sit on like small seats with no legs. So you're kind of sitting on the floor with kind of your legs under the coffee table. But what if you added to the bottom of that coffee table a little heater or a little space heater? And then to keep the heat in, you put a blanket over the coffee table. And then, because it's not really a table anymore, you put another kind of tabley bit on top of that, so you could still use it as a table. Now that is a Kotatsu. It is a feet warmer extraordinaire.
That does sound incredibly snug.
It is the snuggest. It is as snug as a bug in a rug with a mug of cocoa. Exactly. It's great. And also, if people are a fan of Miss Kobayashi's Dragon Maid, as we are both, there is a adorable episode in which they get a Kotatsu and they all just sit under it whilst it's too cold to move.
It's very good. The Kotatsus do show up quite regularly in anime, and it's always a pleasant experience, I think.
They're great, and I don't understand why we don't have them in the West. Well, I do. People hate sitting on the floor, and also it doesn't get cold enough. But other than that, I think we should sit more on the floor.
You need twice as much blankets to go around your dinner table, and because we don't generally have dinner tables in our living rooms, there's not really an awful lot of point.
Well, mine's not a dinner table size, though. I bought a small one. Like, mine's like a 1-2-person one, depending how much you want to kick people.
Yeah. No, I guess if it was like a proper coffee table, though, you could probably get one in here in the West quite nicely. But obviously, you'd have to find someone who sells a Kotatsu, which would be pretty difficult.
Hopefully Amazon will, because I don't want to try and like it wasn't that expensive. It was a decent sized coffee table with like a heater on it. It was about 9,000 yen, which is the equivalent of about $90 or about 70-80 pounds.
Does the heater come as extra? Is that included in
No, it's included.
Can you get them without the heaters?
Not really, because it has to kind of be special. It has to kind of have the fittings to add screws and do that. Because it's like screwed into the table, and then there's a layer, and then there's a tabley bit that goes on top of that. You can use it as just a normal coffee table. You cannot have the blankets on it.
Fair enough.
But no, and with our cozy Kotatsu, I think we need some cozy food. And so, It's off to snack break.
Snack break.
Snack break. Snack break. Snack break. Snack break. Sorry, I found out one of the teachers I work with today loves Thunderbirds, which was
As in the old puppet show.
yes, as in the old puppet show.
Oh, that's great.
I
Oh,
know.
I used to love Thunderbirds when I was a kid. That's fantastic.
Yeah, so did I, and I heard him talking to like the other teachers around his desk about it as well afterwards, which is great.
I want to know everything about that conversation that happened. How long has he loved Thunderbirds? How does he find out about it?
Well,
What's
since he was
going
like
on?
since he was like a small child, because he's like the same age as my dad.
Oh man, I forgot how old Thunderbirds was.
Yeah, it came out in like the early 60s.
Oh Jesus Christ!
Yes, Thunderbirds, like the 1960s, I think 1960s essentially puppet show. It's great. He asked me what my favorite Thunderbird was.
And what is your favorite Thunderbird, John?
Do you want to have a guess?
I'm guessing it's Thunderbird 4.
It's not Thunderbird 4, though Thunderbird 4 is close. It delivers Thunderbird 4.
Thunderbird 2. Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah, because Thunderbird 2 has like so many different options.
That's fair. Thunderbird 2 is a pretty good Thunderbird
The
on
thing
the
they
list of
don't use
Thunderbirds.
Thunderbird 4 enough for it to be a favorite Thunderbird
It
for
is
me.
fairly limited in scope, considering it's specifically an underwater vehicle. What was your teacher colleague's favorite Thunderbird then?
I actually didn't ask him. I forgot to ask him.
How rude.
I think he said me too, but I can't remember. What's your favorite Thunderbird?
Honestly, I don't have one anymore. I probably had one at some point, and I have to admit Thunderbird 2 is a pretty good choice.
I mean, it's just objectively the right choice because it can be anything.
Yeah, I mean, like seriously, you only have three options really out of all the Thunderbirds. You have either Thunderbird 1, in which case you're boring, your
Yep.
Thunderbird 2, in which case you're weird, or your Thunderbird 3, in which case why? Because it's
'Cause it's
also fairly
red.
limited in scope. Yeah, it being red does help a lot.
Yeah, pretty much. But bar that, it's snack break time.
What are we having today, John?
Well, Tom asked me today because he has been watching a Fire Force, which we'll be getting to later. Asked me to get something vaguely spicy because fire. Now the thing is, Japan does not do spice. The
Is it
Japanese
not?
people as a whole are not very good with spice.
Huh.
Like a Japanese curry is usually more likely to be sweet than it is to be spicy.
Yeah, I was gonna say I've heard a lot about Japanese curry, but I would have expected that to be like a proper curry, like spicy.
No, it's not. They're not. They have Indian curry and they like Indian curry, but
Well,
like
obviously,
a mid-tier Indian curry over here is like low tier in the UK in terms of spice. Like
could they handle a balti in Japan? Is what I want to know.
probably just if you're
Oh,
being
okay, that's the upper level, is it?
yeah, it's not. They're really not great.
Oh, that's good for me. I'm going to impress so many Japanese people one day with me eating a balti. Then
Yeah, so what I have here in that case is spicy kare ramen. It's spice curry ramen. Spice and curry together at last.
nice.
So
At last, as they have never been before.
indeed. The thing was, it's a big pot noodle that you add stuff to. It's much more impressive a pot noodle. I took a picture as I opened it. There's like a little cube of like vegetables, like somehow fused together, and as you added hot water to it, like they swelled up and separated and become actual bits of vegetable rather than just like random cubes of orange.
Huh. That I'll admit that does not sound the most appetizing at the moment. That
I
sounds
know
kind of.
it looks kind of ominous, but as I was actually quite impressed. Procrastinating here because it's goddamn hot. But surprisingly, boiling water is hot. Okay, let's try this. I'll be as un-Japanese as possible and try not to slurp my noodles.
That would be best.
Yep, this spice curry ramen has limited spice.
What level is it on? Is it like a coma level? Is it higher than that?
This is it's a 1 at best. This
Ooh.
is not. This is.
A single chili.
I'll drink some of the broth. I'll drink some of the broth and see if that's better because I'm just eating the noodles currently. I'm getting like some presence at the back of my throat, like a tiny bit. Like it's the kind of spice that I like actually because it's like it's there but it's not kicking you in the face. But for something that is advertised as spice curry ramen with a big red pot, with soup, with spice or something, koku or kare ramen, something saying, "Oh, it's so impressive." Like, I'll take a picture of it. I'll put it up on the doodad eventually with all the other things. So if someone actually speaks Japanese and is like, "Oh no, that's the rubbish ramen. You need to get this ramen," I'm more than happy to do that. But
in the meantime, you're just flexing on all of Japan.
yeah, it don't impress me much. Got the brains, but I got the touch. No, I give this a Castlevania mid fight scene dialogue out of 10.
That one caught me off guard, I'll admit. All right, well that is damning. That is knowing your opinion on the witty banter in Castlevania.
And with that spicy interlude, it's time for some spicy anime takes with Tom.
Oh yes, the hottest of hot takes.
What you have the hottest of hot takes to hot take us on, Tom?
Well, today seems like a good day to talk about Fire Force, considering I've just completed watching the first 12 episodes of it. And I believe, John, you've also watched the first 12 episodes of Fire Force.
Yes, but more long ago than you.
It's been a while, has it?
Yeah, just because it had a bunch of like breaks in it and I got confused.
Yeah. I believe we're up to episode 18 now in the schedule.
Possibly I got to do some binging.
Mm.
It originally sold terribly in the Blu-rays and stuff, but it's a really long going thing which has about 40 episodes guaranteed, so snug yourself in, it's gonna be a fiery ride.
Goodness me. So yeah, I've been getting into one of the big shonen releases of last season that's continuing on to this season, which is, because it's still running, Fire Force.
Or
And
if you're Nihongo enough, is in no Shubitai.
It is. I've been having a fairly good time with it. Obviously, with this sort of thing, it's pretty standard shonen stuff. It's lots of fighting and danger and that sort of stuff, and it's quite exciting. But I haven't seen anything particularly special about Fire Force so far that's really stuck out to me beyond the usual expectations.
As a kind of defender of it, I do try and go, oh no, these enemies aren't just, oh, random demons, kick the demon in the face. They're like, oh no, people are transforming into demons, and that really hurts people and their families. And also, the intro is immense, and the OP is a banger.
It's always fair to say that when trying to review a piece of entertainment, obviously your expectation is to be entertained. So when it fulfills that role, you notice it less than when it fails to fulfill that role. So obviously it's easy to be critical of these sort of things, even when they're good. And I will easily say Fire Force is a pretty solid anime so far. The animation has been good. The sound design's all been very nice. The art style's all right. It's pretty good. It's from the same guy who drew Soul Eater.
I'll just quickly do a concept thing, so if people don't know. Essentially, the world's waters have risen because global warming, blah, 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 blah. So Tokyo is now an island, and it's mainly controlled by essentially some people who care about fire. Like there's a fire church and fire soldiers, and also the fire force, which are our main characters. And there's basically to try and stop these things called infernals. Essentially, we can just kind of people anywhere can just kind of turn into an infernal for any reason, and people can turn on fire. And also part of that means people can kind of turn into essentially pyromancers. Some of them can control fire, some of them can just turn themselves a bit on fire, and they use their powers to fight fire with fire and prayers as well. And maybe there's a shenanigans and conspiracy plots going on, but who knows? And we follow our main character and everyone around the firehouse, who are all some really lovely characters. I will say they have a great range of just like actually entertaining characters in like the main core of the peoples.
The characters are pretty good. I do like Arthur for being just an idiot. I find
Yeah,
that.
Arthur's like the main kind of like rival to our main character, but he'd be more like everyone would be like, oh, he's just so technical. Like he is accomplished, but he's also just an idiot.
Yeah, Arthur is once again one of those characters I think I'm going to hate when I go into it, and surprises me just how amusing I find him. I also quite like the lieutenant, and I've really enjoyed Captain Obi so far. But that might just be because I'm a sucker for paragons and characters who have no powers in a world where people have superpowers.
Yeah, I think you're also like the lieutenant because you are the lieutenant.
That might explain some things. I might relate to him more than I probably should. I also just find the idea of my superpowers to make guns non-lethal hilarious.
It's, yeah, essentially the lieutenant, his power is he can control like the power of bullets and how they move around. And also, I'm not going to upload a side-to-side photo of the lieutenant. I've been saying lieutenant in the UK. We said lieutenant, but I'm not going to upload a picture of Tom and the lieutenant side by side. But
Don't bother. Just show a picture of the lieutenant, and that's all they
yes,
need to know.
it's
Stupid
like
hats and everything.
ask me the difference between these two pictures. They're the same picture.
Fair. Yeah, I mean, I quite like the story of Fire Force, particularly because it's a really well-paced story. Everything has
Yeah.
been really moving throughout the first, especially first 6 episodes. Everything was really moving on. These last few episodes we've been slowing down a little bit, going into more world building, quite a few flashbacks, that sort of thing. But that's good because the one issue I had with the pacing of the earlier episodes is that we weren't getting an awful lot of time to connect with the characters.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a lot of flash, but there wasn't a lot of substance early on, and I think that we're getting that now. And if it's really going to be running on for as long as it suggests it is, there's a good chance we might be getting more of that. So I haven't come to a strong decision on what my opinion of Fire Force's storytelling is just yet, because I've only seen a small portion of it with these 12 episodes. But so far, pretty good actually.
I think it's going to be one of those things that's going to be there for a long while, and I enjoy it a huge amount. It's entertaining, but it's got a bit more it's got a bit more grit than like the usual shonen-y stuff. Like just a bit more. Well, not more grit. Sorry,
No,
it more kind of philosophizes about it, which I find kind of cool and a bit more adult. It kind of like what is in it to like to follow and believe in things. It like addresses stuff like religion and beliefs and people with different beliefs working together with different aims and what is important to like the construction of society, which I love things like Kimetsu no Yaiba and My Hero Academia, but they don't exactly like try to address the basis of our society. And I'm not saying Fire Forces either, but I'm just saying it tends to like look at it more interestingly.
yeah, each of the. You're right to bring up those two because they are quite similar in tone. But yeah, Kimetsu no Yaiba isn't a great way of looking at society in general because it's set in a more classical, more historical setting. But I think My Hero Academia has about as much to say about its society as Fire Force has shown so far in the 12 episodes I've watched.
I think they do it in different ways. My Hero Academia does it more in like reflecting or like, oh, I recognize that from our world, and then puts a twist on it. Whereas Fire Force is more like, this is kind of the same, but also like, what if we put essentially people from the real world or the people like normal people into more of these kind of like experiences of it's not like, aha, I am the hero and I will fight the demons. It's, oh my god, this demon was a living, breathing human being. And how do I justify to myself killing them.
Mm. Yeah.
And it's actually, and that sounds really morbid, but it's actually really good. I like that it does that. It sets it a bit apart.
That is the majority of the substance the show has at the moment, which it is generally lacking overall. Continuing the comparisons between My Hero Academia and Fire Force, going back to the pacing. Usually with Fire Force, a lot's happening in a single episode, whereas if you remember the most recent episode of My Hero Academia, episode 69, the entirety of the episode was just focused around one meeting, which is it shows a lot of difference between the two different approaches to storytelling, and neither of them I would consider wrong exactly, because
But I'd
there was
also
a lot
say, due to the fact that My Hero Academia is on episode 69, but
nice.
this is compared to Fire Force being only on episode like 12 or 13. My Hero Academia is kind of like it's earned the slow episodes, if that makes sense.
And they're really good for like character stuff. It was really nice this last episode just to watch the characters interacting and having like a proper emotional moments instead of just wildly flailing at each other with fire like they're doing in Fire Force at the moment.
Indeed, punch the thing, wildly flail. And I think, Thomas, we've been wildly flailing about for probably a bit too long. So therefore,
if you say so.
I think it's time we leave you all for another week. I hope you can survive. Do you have anything more to say, Thomas?
I don't think we have that much. I don't think we're that much mistaken what people are doing on. I think they'll be just fine without us.
Well, if you are not fine without us, as I implore you to be, please check out our Facebooks and our Twitters. We are Geeks and Gaijins at all those places. Sometimes we're Geeks Anthasand Gaijins, not the word Anthasand, the little squiggly symbol that means and. You can also find us on Twitter, Twitter, Facebook, Podbean, iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, and now also Facebook as the podcast as well, I think. Did I get all those right, Tom?
I think so. I haven't got anything else that comes to mind, so I think you got all of them. Good job.
Beautiful. Manager, Manane. It's a goodbye from him.
Ta-ta.
Goodbye.